Today we're back with Drew. Today we're going to just discuss, obviously, big free agency for the Texans. A lot of big moves, especially on the offensive line, which we'll talk about. But obviously, a very exciting period for the Texans. We're going to kind of get into all these signings, all these moves. Going back to even the beginning, where you get the Titus Howard trade and the David Montgomery trade as well. So talking about that, obviously Wyatt Teller, Braden Smith. Uh, Logan Hall, Reed Blankenship, these kind of moves that were big for the Texans, on both sides of the ball. Maybe not some of the most expected moves. I'd say outside of the offensive line, I think kind of those moves were kind of rumored for a little bit. So, Drew, how are you feeling about Texans free agency so
Yeah.
far?
Yeah, I think it was good. I think it was the way to put it is it's like exactly what they needed in a lot of areas. Really no reason to complain whatsoever because if you look at it from a standpoint of team needs, the amount of money they spent on each player, moving on from Titus Howard also really ended up helping. And we weren't sure at first exactly what they're going to do once they got rid of Titus Howard, but they did exactly what they should have done when they got rid of him. And the thing about the Texans now is so they have filled holes at every position, and that puts them in an awesome spot to just it's not the deepest draft this year, but we're
Mhm.
talking like you're taking players that you either believe can start day one or you just develop. So your first 3 to 4 rounds get really interesting there. You can really draft any position that you want. Most likely they'll probably draft offensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, just to get young at those
Yeah,
positions. But the
agreed.
free agency, I think it was really good because you got glorified starters, Reed Blankenship, Wyatt Teller, Braden Smith, who I kind of like the idea of him playing guard. And I think they like the idea of Trent Brown playing right tackle, which makes a lot of sense when you win every single game with Trent Brown in the lineup and him creating push in the run game. I think that they clearly want to just be able to consistently run the ball. And if you can consistently run the ball in the NFL, it opens up so many more things. Probably takes pressure off CJ Stroud too, and that's really all the Texans want going into next season, knowing they already have a top defense. Can they have a consistent offense?
Yeah, and we talked about this plenty of times. But for the most part, the passing offense was not the problem. The
Right.
passing offense was pretty solid. The pass protection wasn't bad. The QB played pretty well throughout the regular season, but they couldn't consistently sustain drives or be good in short yardage or the red zone because they could not run the football. And even just a lower signing like Foster Moreau, who can be a blocking tight end, that kind of stuff helps you in that kind of situation as well. You can play a lot of 12 personnel, which the Texans really could not do last season. They couldn't play 12 personnel
Right.
as much as I'm sure they wanted to. So they added the extra tight end that allows them to do that. And I do still think tight end's probably a position that you're going to see the Texans target in the draft as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's one of the receiver type tight ends, like an Eli Stowers or someone like that, or Sam Roosh, a more blocking tight end, someone like that. They can play. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to go like Kenny Sadiq. I don't think that's going to
Yeah.
happen, but
Right.
I think one of these. There's a lot of day two options at tight end that you could look at. I like Max Clare from Ohio State as well. So there's a lot of options there of guys that they could add to the position. And Nick Haley obviously likes the tight end position. He wants to have good tight ends. So that would be something that I'd look at upgrading as well. Like you said, the
Yeah.
interiors of the lines on both sides are probably something that I think the Texans will look at as well. I wouldn't rule out them drafting a tackle early. I still think that's a position where, Braden Smith is probably slotted as your right tackle right now, but, he's had injury issues. So is Trent Brown. You really don't have a backup left tackle, I'd say. I think it would probably be Blake Fisher right now, but I don't trust Trent Brown to play left tackle at this point in his career. Um, but I don't necessarily know how they feel about Blake Fisher at this point. I don't think they feel great about him playing, which I don't necessarily blame them for thinking that. And then, running back wise, you could still add another running back to the room. I think you probably could add another depth receiver if you want to do that. So there's plenty of options. But yeah, let's go ahead and we can talk about some of the signings as well. Who do you want to start with, Drew? Who are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best signing for me would be, Wyatt Teller. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
Frank, that was one of the bigger signings that you've seen the Texans get in a while, just because great scheme fit and the fact that they had such a big position of need at left guard, and it's just kind of, or left guard, and it feels great to have someone that you just know is going to start because at one point we thought the Texans offense line was pretty solid heading into the season 2 seasons ago,
Mhm.
but this is completely different. I'm totally confident in this group heading into the season, and so it gives you so much flexibility like you talked about. I completely what went over my head that they had two options at right tackle. Braden
Yeah.
Smith's not going to have to play guard. He may end up playing guard. We'll see, but really won't have to. He'll be playing right tackle, and Trent Brown will be playing right tackle potentially as well. So the fact that you have two starters, basically, pure depth, things like that, gives you so much flexibility, and you got to be confident about what they can do. So Wyatt Teller was probably my favorite signing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the one that people were most excited for in general. I feel like Wyatt Teller was kind of the holdup. I think I posted a poll of how people were feeling about free agency maybe a day or two before they signed Wyatt Teller, and the consensus was kind of that it was like around a B. They did a pretty decent job. But even then, the next question was a poll of like if they signed Wyatt Teller, how much would your opinion really change? And I think 70% said yes. It was very resounding that if they were able to get a starting caliber
Yeah,
guard like that people would change their mind on the free agency, or at least take it to the level of, okay, like this went from just a good free agency to like a very very good free agency. And I think we're kind of seeing that now. I mean, at this point, I don't really expect much more from the Texans in free agency. I know people talk about veteran
yeah,
receivers. I don't really understand what that solves for this team. Um, I think they've solved most of their problems. I think maybe you could see them add another edge rusher, which is something I've talked about. Maybe if
yeah,
Derek Barnett wants to come back, he's always welcome to come back. I think is kind of the thing with him.
absolutely.
Um, I know Aaron Wilson was kind of talking about this on his stream the other day that I think he wanted Derek Barnett hit the market thinking he was going to get a decent amount of money, go somewhere else, which we've talked about on here. We think he should go somewhere else and make a decent amount of money,
Yeah,
but maybe the market wasn't matching what he wanted. And so if that's the case, he's always welcome to come back to Houston, like we talked about. Very, very good rotational
yeah,
pass rusher, and something that I do want to get into when we get to the draft portion of this, because I think the third edge rusher spot is probably one of the bigger needs on this team right now. Um, with the way that they rotate defensive ends, and I don't trust Dylan Horton or Dominique Robinson to necessarily be that third edge rusher right now. Um, I think Logan Hall even talked about it. I think Logan Hall sees himself more as a three tech, and I think they probably see him more as a three tech as well. So I don't necessarily think that is a position of need for them. I think they're going to not. I think they're going to address the edge rushing spot at some point, probably in the draft, which we'll talk about as well. So that'll be an interesting need. And obviously, like you said, Braden Smith. What do you think about Braden Smith? So tackle wise, which is probably where he's going to play.
yeah.
Are you optimistic about him? What are you thinking?
I'm very optimistic about him because I think he gives you balance, but also an extra bit of push in the run game. Of course, if someone if there's some time where he gets injured, you have Trent Brown, but at the same time, like I think the Texans clearly saw a fit there for Braden Smith, and so
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think it was a match made in heaven because they're clearly putting emphasis on the run game. And if you look at interviews of Braden Smith, he's always talking about giving an extra push in the run game, and that's something that they wanted. We would always give Titus Howard a little bit too much credit about how he was powerful, but this is truly a powerful right tackle.
Yeah. And I think Titus Howard was powerful in the passing game. I think he had good hands. He had a strong,
An anchor of some sort.
yeah,
Yeah.
good anchor, but he just didn't really move guys in the run game, especially when he would move to guard. His the pass protection at guard was
Yeah.
awesome. He really did a good job, but he just couldn't move people in the run game. Kind of the same thing with Jarrett Patterson, which is what I kept telling everyone, that they were not going into this draft with Jarrett
Yeah.
Patterson penciled in as a starter because he doesn't even make sense in the scheme. There was no
Yeah.
way. There was absolutely no way that was going to happen. I just knew, even when Evan Brown got signed, I was like, okay, then Evan Brown's your left guard till the draft, and that's better
Yeah.
than Jarrett Patterson from a scheme fit. I actually kind of like the signing of Evan Brown. Like I talked about him last offseason a decent amount. At least he provides competition for two different spots on the line. If you need it, he can play a couple
Yeah.
different spots. I think he's an upgrade over Jarrett Patterson as this depth interior offensive lineman. If Patterson eventually gets cut, which I think he probably is
Yeah.
that going that way. Um, I think that they're leaning that direction with him. I think Patterson, I think it saves $4 million if he gets cut. I think he's going to end up getting cut, like I said. So Evan Brown, good depth signing as well. We got a couple questions here. We can kind of answer those. Which signing was your guys' favorite? You said Teller.
Yeah.
I'll probably say Braden Smith was my favorite.
Yeah.
I think he's the best lineman that they signed. I think he's better than Teller right now.
Yeah.
If I had to, um, And I think I like the idea of him being this right tackle that even if he doesn't play every game, I think he is probably an upgrade over Titus Howard, and you save money, an upgrade for the scheme that they're running, that what they want to
Yes.
do on offense. And you cut the money in half essentially. And then obviously the concern with Brady Smith, he can't stay on the field, so you have Trent Brown behind him, which is awesome. I mean, Trent Brown can't stay healthy either, but when Trent Brown is on the field, he's a
Yeah.
pretty good tackle too. So they hopefully can get 17 games out of those guys between those two, and that's
Yeah.
awesome to see. Maybe one of them were underrated. So I do like Logan Hall. I think that signing. I think he's going to be
Yeah.
productive in this
Yeah.
defense. A fun signing. I thought they were going to address defensive tackle like we've talked about. I think he is the three tech. Uh, I think him and Rankins kind of will split a lot of those. And then he does have the flexibility to play edge, which is nice. He kind of fills that Nico Autry role of someone that can do both and be a pass rusher. So, a fun signing there as well for the defense.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with you on Logan Hall there because he's the one player that like there's kind of some untapped potential there. Honestly, I feel like
yeah.
when you're in a D'Amico Ryan scheme where you're gonna attack, you're gonna let him rush. Like he has a great true pass rush win rate. He's got length, he's got finesse, and he's gonna have power when he's rushing from the edge. And so they wanted to move away from Diego Autry. I totally get that. Probably some injury
Mhm.
concerns. He was suspended at one point too. Logan Hall, he has a clean background,
Yeah.
but he also, maybe wasn't necessarily used to his full potential in Tampa Bay, and so maybe not the youngest. He's not like a super young defensive tackle, but he's someone that could be here for a while
Yeah.
if things work out.
Yeah, agreed. And I think John Alexander talked about it. It was rumored that Otsley really wasn't happy with the amount of time he was playing, which I do understand. He's a good player. He wants
Yeah,
to play. I totally get that. And I think it's the same thing for some of these other guys like Barnett, I'm sure wants to probably play more because he can play more. So I totally get that. And I think it's a good thing for the Texans to get younger at the position anyways. I think,
yeah,
they've been shuffling these defensive tackles. They get good years out of them sometimes. But even, you look at this year, Edwards and Fadakasu were two guys in 2024 that were really productive for them. And then this year, they got nothing from those two guys essentially. So you can't necessarily rely on these older guys to continue to keep the level of play that they've had. So getting a guy like Logan Hall that, okay, the floor on him is he's going to be a decent three tech that can play outside. The upside is still there though. You don't necessarily know what he can be. So the upside of him, he could end up being this guy that, not even saying he'll get 10 sacks, but could be a 6 sack guy a season that, could get you 30, 40 pressures, be an impactful player for the Texans for, 3 to 4 years probably, which is
yeah.
something that, would be awesome from that position as well.
Mhm.
We got Jack here. Question: if Peter Woods and Caleb Banks are there at 28, who are you taking? I'll let. I think I would currently go with Peter Woods. That would probably be my opinion. I think he is the more like ready player. I think Caleb Banks is a freak. I
Yeah,
mean, the guy's a total freak athlete. But sometimes on film, he's a little inconsistent on film. I will say.
yeah,
He'll have some, really standout plays, and the next play he'll get knocked back by some random. So it's a little bit of a development thing, but I do think the Texans could develop him. What do you think,
I,
Drew?
I think Peter Woods because I also feel like there's really not much of a drop off in terms of talent as well. I think if you look at
Mhm.
Peter Woods' tape from the season before, even that's phenomenal. We're talking run stops, bull rushes, active hands, burst
Yeah.
from his get off that really can't be matched every single time. And like I understand Banks is a freak and he has some crazy length and crazy linear speed for someone his size, but I think Peter Woods. There's a reason why he was projected to be a top 5 pick at one point in the past 2 years. So I think if Peter Woods fell to Houston, I think that would probably be the thing to do.
Yeah, and I've seen plenty of the consensus mocks have him in the Texans range of that kind of like later first early second round pick. I don't know if there's a better fit at defensive tackle for what D'Amico Ryans wants to do on defense than Peter Woods. I mean, you look at some of the other guys. Caden McDonald would be a very different player than they've had in their defensive tackle room since D'Amico's taken over. I mean, just a total run stuffer. He can't do. He has no pass rush bag. I mean, there's nothing. He's not rushing the passer. But if they
He
want to
would
get a
not.
dominant two down defensive tackle, Uh,
Yeah.
they could do it with Kane McDonald. I know they visited with him at the combine. Uh, I know some of the analysts, Aaron Wilson said they like him. John Alexander's mocked him a couple times for the Texans. So you never know. He could be a guy that they could look at. But I think from a fit perspective, Peter Woods is probably the best fit with the
Yeah.
Texans for what they like at defensive tackle. And Caleb Banks, the foot
Yeah.
injury is a little concerning. He's had a couple foot problems and then he hurt it again at the
Too
combine.
many at
So
this
it's a
point.
little scary with him. I think I'd be thrilled with Caleb Banks at 38 or later, but 28 is a little dicey. I still would be excited about it because he's a very talented player, but there's some risk involved with taking Caleb Banks, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, I think at some point the Texans are going to go young at defensive tackle super
Yeah,
early, and
I agree.
so fully understand that take on McDonald because what if they like you know what we're tired of paying multiple guys to do the same thing. We think this guy is super talented and we can trust him to stop the run for well, shit, at least 5 years on a rookie contract. And so at some point, they may just do that. You're going to see them probably take a really talented player at pick 28. They could always move up or down too. They're probably going to be targeting a specific person this year. If someone drops out that they wanted, they're going to make a trade. They're going to make sure they get the player that they want. So I think that a talented defensive tackle is definitely a big possibility for round one.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I don't necessarily think that I'm super confident they're going to stay at pick 28. I think they very
Yeah.
easily could move back. But again, they don't, that doesn't take them out of the range of these guys like Peter Woods, at like these type of guys. Lee Hunter is another guy that they could like from Texas Tech. Christine Miller is another player that I like a lot from Georgia. Like there's a lot of options defensive tackle. I think they're going to go get one of these guys. I know Orange from Iowa State, or Iowa State's another guy that could be in this range. Um, so that's just something that I'm sure they're going to look at defensive tackle. It's one of their bigger needs, and then um, I think edge rusher, like we've talked about, I think they're going to look at edge rusher pretty early in this draft. Whether it's second round, third round, I think it's going to happen because at some point you got to realize that you're not going to pay Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson $90 million for a combined. See, once that extension hits, you're not Daniil Hunter probably won't be on this team. And currently now they don't have a third edge rusher, and they like to rotate their edge rushers a lot. So it's something that I think they're going to prioritize in the draft. And obviously, you're still going to see interior linemen and that kind of stuff as well, I would assume.
Yeah, I think at some point the Texans are going to add, talent to the edge position. Maybe they don't have the best options available this year, but it's
Yeah.
definitely something they do because that's the thing about what we've seen from the Texans so far is they're always ready to replace or make a move to kind of make sure there's really no drop off. Obviously, we're talking about Daniil Hunter. There's going to be a drop off at some
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
obviously. But Nick Casario comes from the Patriots organization where this is what they consistently do. They try to minimize drop off, minimize cap hits as many times as possible. And so I would like to see edge early, but at the same time, this may be one of the draft classes to do that. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. I mean, I kind of talked about it. It's interesting. I like some of the edge rushers that are the more bendy guys and some of the more pass rush heavy guys, pass rush specialists. But I don't necessarily know if the Texans would like that. Romello Height from Texas Tech, I like a lot. He's pretty fun to watch.
yeah,
Cassius Howell's pretty fun. So there's a couple of those type of guys that just are pure pass rushers. But D'Amico Ryans has not necessarily been the biggest fan of those kind of guys. So
yeah,
I don't necessarily know if that's the route they're going to go, but Romello Height would be a guy that I've mocked him a couple times. That'd be a fun fit for the Texans as the third edge rusher for a couple seasons.
agree.
Um, by the way, we're not Aaron Wilson. We're not falling for the for the
Yeah,
chat.
no way.
I know it's our guys Cal and Jack in the chat, so I'm not falling for it this time. We're not going for the Aaron Wilson special. Look, trying to think of what other signings people want to talk about. I mean, Reed Blankenship.
Yeah,
What do you think about that signing? Because that was kind of one that I didn't necessarily expect. I didn't know that they. I didn't expect them to pay a safety. I don't necessarily think a lot of people did. What do you
yeah.
think about that?
I think it's more like, they had the money to do that. And think about how much the Jaguars paid for Eric Murray.
Yeah,
Um, you know, that's not too far away from Reed Blankenship. I would say Reed Blankenship confidently is a better player, and more importantly, is just a genuine good scheme fit. Obviously, there's things they can do when they want to play just cover one. They also have Jalen Smith, who they can put in the slot on the box too. But Reed Blankenship is just a great player to be a. I mean, I don't want to say like scratch starter, basically, just kind of like a good 11th man on the defense at this point.
Yeah.
I think that you feel safe with him on the field and you don't expect him to really make too many mistakes. Hey, we saw CJGJ make mistakes. We've had other safeties in the past that just weren't that talented and that could, cause issues when the other guys are going to hold up. I'm confident that Reed Blankenship's going to hold up, and it seems like he's really excited to be a Texan too. So great fit.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact very silent tackler. Is not going to make a lot of huge mistakes, like you said. So he's a good fit on the defense, like you said. I think the fact that he gets to come play in a defense like this, it's so talented. He should not be one of your better players on defense necessarily. He should not be one of your premier starters, but he can be a guy that, like you said, doesn't make mistakes like some of the safeties that they've had in the past. That was a problem. And this allows Jalen Reed to also just be this guy that can just play wherever they need him to play. If a guy gets hurt, he could play nickel, he could play deep safety, he could play, where Blankenship's going to play kind of more in the box around the
Yeah.
ball. So literally, he can just do anything that they want him to do, which is super fun. I mean, there's a lot of options. The defense is just so loaded now. I mean, there's very
Yeah,
little
so much
concern about the
depth. It's kind of
defense.
crazy. Like it's almost like the point where I'm literally forgetting names because you're like, oh yeah, he could also start as well. Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
and I mean MJ
exactly.
Stewart's back, who's another good depth
Yeah.
safety that they've had that's played. Um, like you said, there wasn't too many big departures from the defense. I would say I think the biggest one is Tim Settle. He probably was the guy that played the most on the defense. Was a good player for the Texans for the 2 seasons he was here. I mean, he was productive. I think they decided they didn't. 3 years, 24 for him versus two, I think 16 for Rankins. They decided that Rankins was the better fit and the better player for that kind of money, and I think that's understandable. So obviously, good luck to Settle. I liked when he was here. I thought he played well for the Texans, but I understand the fact that you're not going to pay him that when you could go replace him with the draft capital you have and some other things. So it makes sense. Um, I'm trying to think of some other guys that left on defense. I mean, Christian Harris, if anyone really cares about him, he's
Yeah.
gone.
It's just hard
Uh,
to.
there's
Yeah.
really nobody else on defense. Jalen Smith is going to be back, which I feel like people kind of have underrated. Their corner three is still on the roster. They're not going to necessarily go address the third corner spot. He just wasn't playing last year because he was hurt. So that'll be nice to have him back. He'll be a big fit on the defense, which we saw later in the season. The third corner spot was not great for them late in the season, so that's something as well. There's some other free agents that are still out there from the defense. Like I said, Derek Barnett's a one. Danico Autry, who won't be back. He played a little bit for them on defense last year. That's pretty much it on defense because EJ Speed is back. Um, there's not a ton of guys on defense that are leaving. They added Jamal Hummel as a depth linebacker and a good special teamer. So there's
Of
really
course.
not a ton. There's really not a ton that from the defensive. Obviously, it's hard to replicate as good as they were last year. I'm not necessarily saying numbers wise they're going to be even as good, even if they're more talented. But they should be an elite defense again next season. So that's all that really matters,
No doubt about
and really the defense. It's another thing where we didn't even watch the defense on tape most of the season because who really cares? They're a good unit. The offense is what everyone's concerned about. And that's a good transition into. So you want to talk about David Montgomery? I kind of went on here and talked about David Montgomery when the trade happened. I
it.
was
Yeah.
a big fan of David Montgomery as a player, and I think he's a really good fit for the Texans. What do
Yeah.
you think about Montgomery?
I think he's a great fit as well because you saw
Yeah,
the increase in amount of duo that they're running in between those tackles, and I just think that at some point you're going to want a running back that you simply can just trust to get a little bit extra yardage by falling forward, breaking a tackle, seeing the hole, and so it's a really good fit for him, and also to have him next to Woody Marks as well because Woody Marks also has great vision in between the tackles. He's got the burst, so it's a little bit of a change of pace there too. And I think that duo could be pretty dynamic. I think really can't complain. Decent value. It's not that deep of a draft, so I
yeah,
understand the picks that they gave away. And you saw how the running back market played out. They probably were better off not signing
Yeah,
Kenneth Walker because you're probably
agreed.
talking maybe no Reed Blankenship, maybe even no Braden Smith, who knows, at this point. So I
And
think
then
that
your
David
fallback
Montgomery,
option of Travis Etienne getting 13 million is ridiculous. So
right.
I think you could make the argument that like Rico Dowdle would have made sense if they would have hit free agency, and I think he's a good player. I
Yeah.
like Rashad White for 1 year 2 million was really good value as well. Like there was a
Yeah.
couple good value free agency signings, but David Montgomery's a better player than these guys. And then his adjusted contract is nothing too crazy. I think 2 years 16 million with 10 guaranteed is not a ton of money.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have him for 8 for the next 2 years versus Kenneth Walker, who I just wasn't the biggest fan of Kenneth Walker on tape. He made these explosive runs, but down and down it was not pretty a lot of times. There was a lot of negative plays. It's the reason the Seahawks didn't lean into him as much as you would think they did. Like
Yeah.
uh, Charbonnet was their lead back for a lot of the season because they just wanted to be a better down to down running team, and he gave
Yeah.
him that. So that's why I'm a big fan of Montgomery as well. Woody, I'd like to see the target share for the running backs go up next season because Woody Marks could be very very good in that role. I wonder how much the impact of just not knowing if he could stay healthy when he's taking as many carries as he was taking, throwing him the ball more. But I want to say they were 26th in target share for the running backs last season. I'd like to see that up at least in the middle pack because Woody Marks is very capable of making plays happen after the catch, making big plays. Um, and you just didn't really see him get a lot of targets last season. So I would like to see him get more targets. I think he's good on a 6 to 8 carry a game type of guy. And I think he'll be effective in that role as well. And I wouldn't rule out them drafting another running back at some point as well. So um, very excited about the running back room. I think it's much improved from last season. I think David Montgomery. I talked about this. I think David Montgomery right now is better than Joe Mixon was when the Texans traded for him, and that's maybe a little bit of a hot take on that one. But I'm very excited about Montgomery. I definitely think he's going to make a big impact. I think he might be the best overall player the Texans acquired this offseason. Uh, and that says a lot about they made a couple of really nice moves in this free agency as
Yeah.
well. So
No, that's fair because Montgomery's always been an efficient player, a well-rounded player, but at the same time, like his targets and his carries have gone down the past 2 years because of Jahmyr Gibbs, and so for him to probably be the penciled-in starter over Woody Marks, it'll be interesting to see how he looks because age doesn't really matter. It's more about the workload, and his workload really hasn't been heavy, and so you're
no.
talking 3 years of well, I guess 2 years, but we could be end up being 3 or 4 years where he's just getting slightly more carries than the next guy and being highly productive while doing so.
Yeah, I don't think the Texans should want a running back or necessarily want an offense where the running back is taking, a single running back is taking 25 carries a
Right.
game. Like they've had that happen the last couple of years. That should not be the case. They should not like David Montgomery. Give him 15 carries a game. Give Woody 8. Maybe if you go get another running back, give him 2 or 3. Right? If you want to be a run heavy team,
Very,
you want to
very
run the ball
simple.
25 times a game. Something like that would be very effective as a running team. And obviously, they want to be a running team. It makes everyone's life easier on offense so they could just run the football, be a good time possession team, not turn the football over, and then let CJ Stroud, work off of shorter down and distance, off of play action, that kind of stuff would be very effective for him. And I mean, like I said, David Montgomery, very good between the tackle runner, which there was not a lot of good between the tackle runners in free agency this offseason. There was a lot of guys that, more outside zone.
Yeah.
Uh, Brees Hall was an option. Obviously, he ended up getting tagged, but Kenneth Walker was more of an outside the tackle type of runner. Um, you look at, I'm trying to think of other guys. Travis Etienne can't run
Yeah.
between the tackles. He's
No
never
way.
been able to do it in the NFL. There just wasn't a ton of guys. Rashad White was one of the better ones statistically last season, so he would have been an option, like I said. He could have been an option either way, though. For $2 million, the Texans wanted him. They probably could have
Yeah.
signed him still. So um, they obviously decided they didn't really care to get Rashad White. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Texans upgraded their running back room, upgraded their offensive line. Arguably, I wouldn't necessarily say they upgraded the defensive line right now because they still have gotten, they really hadn't. They signed Logan Hall,
Yeah.
Dominique Robinson, but they lost, Nico Autry, they lost Derek Barnett, who are probably better players than those guys right now. So that's a position that I still think the
Mhm.
Texans will look at in the draft. Obviously, they got 4 top 69 picks and 5 in the top 106, I want to say. So they have enough capital to go get a lot of these guys that they want to go get. At least not a super deep draft. So I'm sure that if they see a guy that they want, they're just going to go try to trade up and go get those guys. We've seen that happen plenty. Because outside of center, there's not a huge need on this team right now. And I don't think Jake Andrews is a horrible player or anything. But I would say center is probably a position they're going to look to upgrade as well.
Yeah.
So um, I don't necessarily know if there's any other signings that people really care about. I mean, the punter, Tommy Townsend's out. I'm happy about that. I,
Yeah, a
I,
lot
I
of
was
people
not a
are
big
happy
Tommy
about
Townsend
that.
fan.
Yeah.
Um, I don't necessarily think there's a ton of other signings that people. Evan Brown's a cool depth signing. I liked the move to get him as well. Foster Moreau, good depth piece. Good tight end too. Good 12 personnel. He's good in pass protection. He's got some good run blocking season. So I like that idea. Um, I think that's pretty much it for the Texans and free agency. I think that's the basis of it. I mean, obviously, Wyatt Teller happened a couple days ago. Probably the most excited I've seen the fan base for a free agency signing in a while. Um, I know people. I know Drew's kind of taking a call here, so I'll just kind of talk about what the draft and stuff. So, we'll get to the draft and stuff if Drew's able. Um, but very exciting free agency period for the Texans. I want to say probably the most excited I've seen the fan base after free agency in a while, probably since maybe 2024. Definitely did not have the excitement last year for free agency. I think people were a little disappointed with the free agency last year. So
Yeah,
uh,
and you could see the activity was not necessarily just like depth pieces this year. It was
yeah,
well-known starters at multiple positions that I think definitely made an impact on the fan base too. I think the fan
uh,
base has been probably a lot happier than last year, and I think the media is going to be able to say, "Well, the Texans made a lot of additions, and it kind of solidifies them there." And even we can easily tell that it was exactly what they needed to do in
yeah,
terms of.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, we talked. Wyatt Teller was a guy that I've talked about, and I'm sure other people have talked about. He's kind of a name at this point. He's not necessarily the All Pro level guard that he was earlier in his career, and that's
Right.
okay. But he's still better than the options they've had at guard for a while. And
Wow.
I do still think he can play. I think he still can run block. He's not Lakin Tomlinson level where it's like this guy is just brutal. We kind of watched Lakin Tomlinson and talked about him the last couple of years. Was not very good. He just was not very good. I mean, we knew this. Lakin Tomlinson still has some things in the tank. He still can be a productive player for the Texans, and it's not like they paid him a ton of money. It's not like he got this top tier guard money. Brandon Thorne, who I think is one of the better trench type of guys, when it comes to he still loves Wyatt Teller. He still thinks he was one of the best interior linemen, out there. So in a better system, playing next to better players, he's gonna have Braden Smith too, or no, I guess he'll have Ursery because he'll be playing the left side. So he'll have Ursery there. Hopefully, probably a new center, if I had to guess, probably a rookie center, and then an improved
Yeah.
offensive line as well. Just in general, they have an offense now where they have guys that fit what they want to do on offense. They have an idea and an identity on offense, which I don't necessarily know if they had last year. They didn't have something that they could go to all the time on offense. Now it feels like they do. They want to be a good gap running team. They want to be a team that can control time possession and that kind of stuff. And they have the guys to do that now, which is something that's very fun.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I appreciate the Texans showing confidence in Jake Andrews because the dude played injured for most of the season, if not the entire season. That he was when he was
Yep.
on the field, and you've made posts about it before. Week one looked really really good. Maybe the rest of the weeks didn't look great, but if you look at his skill set, I think that it translates really well to probably what they're going to want to do more of in terms of the run game in the future. I think you have enough help, certainly enough help in pass protection from your guards now that you feel confident in the development of Jake Andrews. And if they're to get a rookie center, that's great too. I think that there's definitely a lot of interior guards and center options in this draft. So it'd be fun to just like have options too.
For sure, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not opposed to Jake Andrews starting at all. I think Jake Andrews is a better player than
Exactly.
he's been given credit for, and I don't think Evan Brown, who I know they signed, I don't think if it was a competition between those two, I think Jake Andrews would win that competition. I think he's a better player than Evan Brown currently.
Yeah.
Um, but I still think he's got 1 year left on the contract. He necessarily hasn't proven that he's not necessarily proven that he can be a super high level player. And so I do think it's a position that they will want to address. And like you said, there's a decent amount of guys that they could go target. Connor Lew is the guy that they could go after from Auburn. Um, Sam Hike is probably more of a zone fit, but I do think he could play in either scheme, and I think that's the guy that they could target as well. Trey Zune. is also a guy from Texas A&M that could convert inside. I watched the Michigan State center. I forget how you say his name, but I watched him yesterday. I think he could be a good player. Matt Golbin is kind of an underrated center in this draft. I think he could be a good player, good fit as well. He would fit really well. He's a very strong center, experienced, so he could pretty much start early if they wanted him to. Wouldn't necessarily cost you. It probably could be a late third, something like that. So I think there's a lot of good options for the Texans in this draft at center if they want to upgrade. But Jake Andrews very well could be the Week 1 starting center, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think he could get a shot there. Texan Engineer says, hasn't Jake Andrews been injured most of his NFL career? Absolutely, that's been his issue. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. So obviously, you draft the rookie, you let them battle it out in camp. If Jake Andrews wins, he probably looks good in camp. He plays, and then if he gets hurt, then you have a rookie behind him. So they're in a spot now where we're kind of grasping at straws, looking for needs on the roster. So it's a good
You
spot
really
to
are.
be in. I know Bill Barnwell wrote his needs thing the other day, and he put punter as the biggest need for the Texans. So when you're looking like that, you're feeling pretty good about how your roster looks. Um, but I feel like a good time to kind of transition. We're talking about the rookies. Let's go ahead. We're going to kind of do just a mock draft here, just for kind of the fun of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Casario likes moving around a whole lot, so you never really
Yeah.
know what he's going to do. But just to kind of get an idea of some guys the Texans could target, and obviously, Drew's probably the draft guy here, so he can kind of give you some rundowns and some players if y'all want
Yeah.
some ideas for these guys. So here, we'll just kind of. Can you see my screen? Everything look good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. It looks good.
Okay. So we'll kind of get
Let's
here.
see what
So here we go. We got this board.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's some players here. Peter Woods is available. Caleb Banks, Caden McDonald. There's some
Yeah.
guys you could look at if they want to go tackle. Ian Aker probably is a little high for him, I think, right now with where the Texans are at, even though I like him as a player. Emmanuel Pregnon's a guy that I
Yeah.
know a lot of people have liked. Lomu is the guy that the Texans could look at. Lee Hunter. Chase Pasantis is another guy the Texans could look at. I like Gabe. I forgot. I don't know how you say his last name, to be honest with you, but I like him. He's got some
Yeah.
versatility. He's got some versatility. Can play inside and out to add to the room. What are you thinking here, Drew?
See, the thing is here is like I feel like with the first round pick in this year's draft, it might be important to simply get someone that you see a future in.
Yeah.
So Max E. Hennichor is someone I think is a really bright future in the NFL in terms of like being a dominant run blocker, and he's
Good scheme
also an
fit.
extremely raw player. He has an interesting background. He didn't play much football growing up. That's a thing NFL teams love. So more so to me, saying he actually might go early in the first round for all we know.
Yeah.
But that also leads us to Caleb Banks and Peter Woods. I have no idea if Peter Woods is actually going to be available.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too unlikely because I know teams are a little bit iffy about the arm length and that kind of stuff. So it could happen. It really could.
Yeah. I haven't really read too much about that, so that was honestly good to know. I'm not really bullish on Blake Miller.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not a huge fan of him either.
I'm not really a big fan. I think we got to get. Oh, it's also Emmanuel Pregnons.
Yeah. The only thing with Pregnon that I think he's a good player. The concern I have with him now is that he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, and he's probably not going to play year one for the Texans. So
and that's not what the
I don't
Texans
necessarily
need
know if that's a
whatsoever.
good fit. So he really might not play until he's 27, and that's a little concerning.
Exactly.
If I was going to go guard at this point,
weak.
I think I'd prefer Basantis, to be honest with you, because there's upside there. But I think I'd stay away from guard this early. I think if I was drafting, I think I'd go Peter Woods at this spot. I think that makes a lot of sense for what the Texans could do. I think him or Caden McDonald. Like I said, I like Ian Aker as well. I just don't necessarily know if they want to go. The Texans have talked about this for forever, that when they draft in the first round, they want a guy that can start immediately. And I don't know if there's a route for him to start all that quickly. He's more of a developmental guy. I think at 38, the Texans would probably take him if he was there at 38. You don't necessarily know where he's going to go, but I think they would be on that. I think right now I would go with one of the defensive tackles, probably one of these two, if I had to guess. But Peter Woods would make a lot of sense here.
I think I'll have to agree with you on Peter Woods here, because if we're going to look at the philosophy and talk about it like that, it would make the most sense because, sure, they don't play a specific defensive tackle a lot of snaps, fine. That's because they simply have not had one that's just uber talented.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is finally the year they're gonna probably have at least two of these guys between McDonald, Banks, and Woods on the board at 28.
Yeah.
They may even trade up for one of these guys at like to like 20 or something. I think this would be the year to do that, knowing that they have pick 38, 59, and 69 to potentially spend on two interior offensive linemen and an edge rusher. And that's really all they're probably thinking of needing. And then until you go tight end later in the draft.
Yeah. And really, you could argue that any of these five guys, if you took them at 28, that there's upside there. I'm not the biggest
Yeah.
Lee Hunter fan. I think he's a good player. I don't necessarily know if he's a first round caliber player, but like I said, Christine Miller, I think he's very, very good. I think he's a very good player.
Yeah.
So really, any of these four guys you could take here, and I wouldn't be mad about it. But I think for the Texans, Peter Woods makes the most
Yeah.
sense. You lock up, like you said, you get an uber talented defensive tackle. And and again, you're sitting here at the top of the second round. This is a spot where the Texans could look to trade out as well if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, but
Totally
I,
agree.
I, I don't necessarily want to mock trades because you never really know. I think we can kind of just
Yeah.
sit here and look. Um, Pregnon, again, he's on the board. I think he could be on the board at 38 as well. I think it's realistic. But I just am not the biggest fan of taking an old rookie that's not going to play immediately. I don't know
Yeah.
how I feel about that.
It can
If
make a
you
lot of
wanted to
sense for
say,
other teams, but you
yes,
made
I
a great
agree.
point that it really just doesn't make sense for the Texans to do it. I would be really confused if they did it because the guys that they got, like, yes, they're
Mhm.
old, but they're gonna play these 2 years. Like, these are
Yeah.
legit starters
Yeah.
that are giving you 2 years. Not, maybe it'll be 1 year and then we'll cut them. No, these guys are
And
not getting
Ed
cut
Ingram's
at
going to
all.
be here. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a
and
younger guy. He's going to be here through his contract.
yeah,
Um, if they do draft Pregnon, it would signal to me that they think that Teller might not be,
yeah,
he might be kind of on the downturn, which is fair. I mean, he might be, right? So you think
right,
Pregnon maybe could play left guard early. But I just am not the biggest fan of that idea.
yeah,
I just think there's better options, to be
yeah.
honest, for them now.
Mhm. My hunch
And
is
you look
that they're confident enough
Teller.
in Teller at this point.
Yeah, I would
There's
agree.
there's a lot of interesting names, honestly, here. I feel like you're probably right. They're probably gonna look to trade out of this pick specifically.
Yeah.
But you could get an edge rusher. I mean,
Yep. Like I
not gonna
said,
knock
I
him
think
down.
this could be an interesting pick here at this
Yeah,
spot. Get a guy that can play on your defensive line. I like the idea of Chase Basantis here as well. I think that makes sense if you want a guard that can, be a developmental guy.
yeah.
I think he's got upside. I
Yeah,
know they like
what's
Kalen.
the size on Bissonets or Bisontis?
Um,
Sorry.
let's see.
You can
I don't. Oh
always
yeah, so he's
okay, there
six
it is.
five, 315.
6'5", Yeah, I mean that's definitely a developmental build. If anything, right there, it said he was 21.7, so
Yep.
he'll be
Yeah, he's a
22
younger
by the
guy.
start of the season. He won't be 20. He won't be 22 by the draft. So kind of like the feeling of that. If you really are going to stay at 59 and 69, you probably feel comfortable taking Bisontis right here.
Okay. Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think Basantis is not necessarily a guy that has to play immediately, but if Teller, gets hurt, I think he can play.
Yeah,
Basantis is very, very clean in pass pro. He's a very, very good pass protector. The run game is a work in progress, and that's something the
and that's a
Texans obviously
good thing
want
to
to.
develop.
Yes, and especially, you know what? If there's a guy that you want to learn from when it comes to run blocking, Wyatt Teller's not the worst guy.
Yeah,
He can absolutely help you there. Um, and I think he's a perfect
for
guy to
sure. Yeah,
throughout camp. And if he has to start some games, it's not the end of the world because he can pass protect, right? He's got a higher floor than some of the other developmental guys because he is a good pass protector, and he
yeah,
really had done well throughout college in that. And I think he played right tackle early for A&M. If you want to look at his not, yeah, so he played right tackle at some points too. So he's got some little versatility if you want
yeah.
to. I think he's a fun player. I will tell you, like, I know A&M is A&M guard. I know people are not the biggest fans of that around here. Totally
Of
understandable.
course.
Um, but I will say, from watching a decent amount of A&M, obviously my dad, A&M fan, I've watched a good amount of their games. Their offensive line the last couple seasons was really, really good. They were very, very, they're a very good unit. They're going to have probably 4 linemen drafted this year between Crownover, Zune, Reed Adams, and Basantis. So they're a very good unit. And I wouldn't be scared off by the A&M thing. He's a very different player than Kenyon Green as well because he's not a run blocker centric. He's not a guy that
Yeah,
is going to be a huge run blocker, anything like that. So you're sitting here at 59. I think there's a couple options. I think you could
there's a
say the
lot.
Texans could start the center run and go
Yeah,
get the center they want at this pick. I think that's a valuable option. At this pick, I would say the center. I think Lou makes a lot of sense for them. I don't necessarily know if he's the most pro-ready player out of the center class, but I think he has a lot of upside. He's a younger prospect. I want to say, yeah, he's not even 21
yeah,
yet. Um, so he's a very
yeah.
young guy. Hecht is he's a better zone guy, but another guy that they could look at. Like I said, down the board, I like. I guess he's not high on their board, but I like Matt Golden a lot. I think he's a good player. He's played guard as well, so he can kind of do a little of everything.
He played
Um,
tackle a little bit too. That was
so,
good to know.
and then you look at some other positions, tight end. Max Player is an option if you wanted to go that. You could go Sam Roosh at this spot as well. Um, Oscar Delp at this spot. I think he's on the board. Maybe not. I don't remember where he is on the board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
he's
is a
down on the
really
PFS board.
this is a really, really, really deep tight end draft. I mean, just
Yeah,
looking at the names, I mean, I could see probably 12 of those guys being starters at some point.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
know the Texans won't look at him. I like Justin Jolie or Jolly. I like him a lot. He's a good player. I like Borgacher from A&M. I think he's a solid player as well.
yeah,
Tanner Koziel, U of H, go Cougs. Good player. So there's a lot of options. I wouldn't necessarily push too hard for tight end here. I think there's some options. Trig is
yeah,
kind of a glorified slot. Honestly, he can't block. So
right.
I don't necessarily know if I would go with him. You kind of look at some other positions. Edge rusher, again, you could go with. I would have no issue with them taking Romello Height at this spot, honestly.
Yeah,
Uh, it's a little, I think you could argue, maybe he's more of a third round guy. I think he's a very fun player, and I think he could really, fit with what the Texans want to do, rushing the passer. He's got, the bend is ridiculous on him. I mean, 21.8 pass rush win rate is pretty
right.
ridiculous. I think there's an argument to be made that would make sense as a pick here.
Absolutely.
Um, so I would be fine with him being the pick, and then you wait to 69 to go get your center. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're
Any other
so.
guys you have in mind
Let me,
here?
it to
Ant Hill,
me,
if you want to go
it's
linebacker.
it's tough because it really truly is a great cluster of
Yeah.
players, and it really has to be about who do we covet the most, who do we think
Mhm.
probably,
So,
frankly, has the most upside, because that's what we've been talking about is the opportunity that they have because of
yeah.
their free agency signings. I I, I think I'm gonna say Connor Liu here because man, it
Okay.
would feel
Yeah, I
good to
like
take
that.
advantage. It would really be good to take advantage of the talented and young batch of offensive linemen in this draft.
Yep.
I don't know about next draft, but I'm feeling pretty confident that defensively it's going to be very stacked, and they're going to have a great opportunity next year as well to get that what's the word for it, Daniil Hunter replacement.
Yeah. And now you sit here at 69, right? So you've kind of shored up the interior. You got two younger
Yeah,
guys that you can develop on the interior. Tight end's an option as well. I still think Romello Height makes a lot of sense here. I know he's still on the board. Um,
yeah,
I like the idea of taking an edge rusher here. I like safety's not a bad option as well if you wanted to do that. Although I think they're kind of deep at that position now. I don't think they'd want to double up on defensive tackle this early.
yeah.
I like,
No.
I'd be okay with
I
taking a
do like all the
linebacker at this spot as
linebackers.
well.
Yeah, I like the linebackers.
Um,
I mean, I even liked Bryce Botcher last year,
mhm.
but he didn't end up declaring. And they also got Deontay Lawson, who
Yeah,
eh,
Deontay Lawson's a good player.
I think is a decent athlete, and I love that there's a guy that's just been a starter for so long in the SEC with upside too. Is just
Mhm.
an awesome background to have. And Kyle Lewis is kind of freaky talented too. Maybe not the biggest guy, but certainly someone that would probably fit the Texans because you see they have like the lighter linebackers, kind of, if you will. Toa is not the biggest, but he's a good
Mhm.
athlete. Alfayir, he's pretty dense and good athlete too. Um, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
so
there's a lot of options here. Like I said, if you want to go linebacker, that's an option. Edge rusher is probably an option here. Um, there's enough players, on this board to where you could kind of wait on one of the positions. Like you could probably get two. I like Mason
like Mason,
Rager
Shrine
from
Bowl
Wisconsin as
MVP.
well. Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah,
Um, So, if you wanted to say, okay, we can go linebacker at this spot and wait on edge rusher, I think that's a valuable option as well. Um,
Yeah, I was actually go back to tight end real quick
okay, yeah, yeah.
because they don't pick again until 106. I just want to see that's yeah. I feel like you could really go Sam Roosh here,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, just because there's so much depth,
At the
and
other
you don't
positions.
we already are saying we don't believe that Romello Height is the most balanced player.
Mhm.
He's not going to stop the
That's true.
run.
Yeah,
He doesn't have the size that they would ever trust to
yeah.
be the starting edge rusher. And so we're trying to find someone that can start at some point. And to me, that's Sam Roosh. Jack Endries, too, is probably a future NFL starter.
Hmm.
And I think that that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I'm good with that pick.
Because there's a
Like
lot
you
of
said,
rotational linebackers and edge rushers seemingly in the third and fourth round that would hate to say do similar things, but they really would do similar things.
yeah, and I mean, even now you look at,
So I
you
would
look at some of
actually
those
right here, I
positions.
would go Anthony Lucas immediately because he's essentially like another kind of Danico Autry clone. He's 6'5", 275 pounds, but he doesn't
Yeah.
look like he's 200 or 280 pounds. He doesn't look 285 pounds at all. Of course, they could literally be lying. He could be
Yeah.
260 pounds, but the point is he has bend, he has some power too. He's active hands, and that would be an awesome player to turn into a beast.
Yep. So now, you look at your selections. You've gotten
Yeah.
younger on the defensive line. You've added pieces to develop on your offensive line. You got another tight end that you can use, and now you're sitting here at 141. Linebacker would probably be a
Probably,
position that you
yeah.
could look at.
I just
Torian
don't
York,
love.
I liked
I
at
I
A&M. I think he was a
don't
good
know.
player.
Maybe look at.
Um,
Well, I guess we kind of set at safety because I keep forgetting about Jalen Reed, so it's hard to.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um.
You could look at running back here if that's a position that you
Yeah.
could add another back. Emmett Johnson. I like
Yeah. I mean,
Trayshawn
honestly,
Allen.
if we're just kind of thinking of things we like, if Damon Claiborne's probably the most explosive back behind Jeremiah Love. He showed some real speed to me on tape. He was someone that we looked at for the Shrine Bowl and eventually did get an invite. Jaden
There you
Ott,
go.
he has an interesting background too. Did not play much at Oklahoma, but did have great film from Cal. And you also got Emmett Johnson, who I don't know about if he has run grades. I don't know if they. Yeah, like that's what I was thinking. I believe he is a gap runner more than a zone runner,
Yeah,
and so that could be a potential fit there. Though I feel like there's not too much value from really taking a running back yet.
yeah.
Just trying to think of what makes.
I mean, like I said, you could go. I don't necessarily think they're going to draft another lineman this early. I think they may wait,
Yeah.
until seven to draft a depth tackle or something like that. Um, I think like I said, linebacker could be an option. I think corner at this point maybe could be an option as well if you wanted to
That's
get
true.
another depth corner.
Yeah.
Um, you look at maybe another defensive tackle could be an option.
Oh,
Running back.
go back to defensive tackle or just defensive tackle if you can,
Yeah, yeah, I can do that.
because you have to remember is they lost, I guess, at least three interior defensive
Hmm.
linemen, and they
Yep.
only added a three technique in Logan Hall. So I'm kind of trying to like to me, Demonte Capehart and Regis are
Hmm.
both run defenders, and so I feel like that
Yeah,
could
I mean
work.
that could make sense. I know Regis from watching A&M he's a big dude. Uh,
Yeah,
so what is he? Yeah, 6'1", 317. So
he's kind of like,
um,
well, okay. I'm also forgetting about our the other defense toe guy, Tommy Toe guy.
yeah, yeah,
The Texans have too, and so Regis could make sense. They don't have to do anything here. I mean, remember this is round 5. They filled so many holes in their roster. Kind of just shooting darts here, like you've talked
yep.
about before. So I'll hand this one to you, honestly.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I said I like Regis at this spot. I think that would make sense. I like some of these
Yeah,
running backs as well. I think adding a back could make sense if you're going to try to be a big running team. You can just
yeah,
get another back. I like Torian York a little bit. I think that could make sense as a He is like I said, he's a smaller linebacker though, is a little concerning. He doesn't have the size.
Very. Yeah.
Um, he's very instinctual. He makes good. He plays uh, hair on fire a lot of times, which I think the
Yeah.
Texans may like, but I don't necessarily know if he's much different from the linebackers that they've had. I think that might be a little thing, but I do think it's important that they could look at linebacker depth because Toa Toa's contract is up next year. And they may want to have a guy to develop just because I don't think EJ Speed is necessarily going to be a guy that they want to develop there. Um, I think they would like to take a linebacker at some point in this draft. So I'd probably lean to taking a linebacker at this spot. Do you have any preference on who at this spot, or just kind of
Um, this is alone. I remember being at the Shrine Bowl and the Texans talking to Red Murdoch, a little more than
The Buffalo
most,
linebacker?
and he graded out extremely well. He is a run stuffer, no
Okay,
doubt
yeah,
about it. He's
yeah.
not the best athlete. He's not the best athlete whatsoever. But if I had to guess, just based on it seems like they're already interested, and
The first non-power five
it,
player from Casario.
oh God, I mean, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is very, very true.
we're
But
throwing
you
darts
never
here
know.
now.
Going off of a
You know what?
hunch, they
This
had
year
interest in
they've treated this a little differently. So you know what? I'm fine with that. Address linebacker. Um, I'm cool with it. I think that's a good idea. And we sit here at 167, and you got a lot of the same players kind of on the board. You got the running
yeah,
backs. You got let's see who they got at defensive tackle. So the top two guys are kind of off the board now. I don't necessarily know if they're going to take one here. I mean, anyone that you like in Pacific out of these guys, or just kind
yeah.
of
I really like Skylar Gill Howard
okay,
as kind of like a Mario Edwards comp a little
okay,
bit.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think that makes sense. Get another guy that can rush the passer. Um, but I guess Lucas is also a guy that can move inside. So you don't necessarily need another guy that could. Um,
yeah. It's tricky because, like I said, he doesn't really look. He
mhm,
really doesn't look that big,
yeah.
and so he would be third down only at the three
Okay.
technique,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
leaves Logan Hall. And so maybe we look at another position too, because I just feel like that's a kind of a packed room. Now that you think about it, like what they're going to do on third down,
Yeah.
and that leaves you with Skylar Gill Howard. I think he's a little bit
If you
undersized
want, I
too.
mean,
So
safety could be an option if they really want to go and just add another depth safety. Um,
there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of safeties there that I would definitely trust in like a dime package. I mean, Husky from Maryland balled out. BJ Payne has had really good moments too. Cole Wisniewski, he's 6'4", like 200 pounds. Someone you could kind of develop a little bit as well. Just some things to think about there. Um, Heard good things about Catalan.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm good with Husky if you want to go that route, kind of get a guy that can play all over the field again. I mean, he played some
yeah,
corner, so you that kind of
yeah. Honestly, that's probably the move because again, this is going to probably be a lot different of a draft than past because they have a full room
yeah,
of so many position groups. It's like, well, they probably don't need them, but you might as well, and that's okay because they're building a talented roster.
yeah. And I think you're going to look at a lot of these guys on even on draft day, and the Texans are probably going to take a lot of these guys maybe before then they're projected to be selected because they just don't have that many needs,
Yeah,
and they just we just
exactly.
like this player, we're going to take him. That's really where they're at with where their roster is constructed. And now you sit here at 243. I think running back would be an option here just to add another body to the room. I mean, Dean Connors, I know you liked him at the
There you go.
considering
Third
you could
down
get a
back.
U of H guy. I know you liked him at the bowl. Um,
Yeah.
anyone else that come to mind here? Any other position you're thinking?
Um,
I mean, they got your
Other
linebacker.
positions. Yeah, we go to linebacker actually.
Yeah,
I guess tackle. That's true.
they could go tackle here as well, I think.
I mean, it's hard to go tackle because if you just think about the roster outlook, like, all right, this guy's probably gonna go in the practice squad
Yeah.
because you have you have Blake Fisher, I guess, at either tackle, and technically you have Trent
Yeah,
Brown at probably right tackle only, but
I don't necessarily think Blake Fisher is like the worst fourth tackle in the world. Like
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
really
fine.
don't. I
You might
really
as well
think
keep.
he's better than a lot of the like depth tackles around. So I don't necessarily have any issue with him being on the roster. I think that's fine. Um, and I think people forget he's also 23 years old. Like I'm not totally ready to say like Blake Fisher was a disaster because when he played last year, he wasn't that bad. And so I'm not totally like saying that they should, prioritize developing Blake Fisher. I don't think that's what they should do. But I also wouldn't say that if they keep Blake Fisher and they don't necessarily draft a tackle in this draft, that's like a bad idea either. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, who else are you
Yeah,
thinking? Like I
this is
said,
hard. For all we know, the Texans won't be kind of picking here, if we're being honest.
mhm,
They may combine picks, of course. And so, while you may, how many players have we drafted so far? One, two, three, four,
three,
five, six,
yeah. So this would
seven.
be
Okay,
yeah.
7 so far.
So this would be eight.
7 so far. I think the number would probably be 7, but I think that you're probably looking at running back. You could
I know
also
that they've had
probably
Rand
also do,
they've had him in for a
yeah.
visit, which I don't know if that means
Okay.
anything, but just if you're thinking running
Yeah,
back,
literally that could mean to throw people off sometimes.
yeah.
I think another position that you would double down on would be edge and tight end as
Mhm.
well, just because again, 7th round, it's tough, but like it's true. Like the people sometimes pan out. Sometimes these guys are just always on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, and
But if
we've
you're just
seen
talking
defensive
about roster,
linemen in the seventh round pan out. I mean, I know it didn't necessarily work out here, but Roy Lopez made a good career for himself. Uh, he's a productive
yeah,
player wherever he goes. He's made money in the NFL. Like we've seen these kind of guys be developed over time. So, these picks at the end of the day, they
yeah,
still matter. They're still important picks.
they do. And there's definitely some edge rushers that I like as developmental guys. I mean, Patrick Payton, definitely a developmental guy. The problem is he's very severely underweight and he's never put the weight on. In college,
Mhm.
and so that's definitely a concern. Um, you also got. I guess we could go. Yeah, we go to tight end. And I remember really liking Seydou Traore, more of a big slot as well.
Uh-huh.
Bauer Sharp is kind of like
Actually,
a
now that I think of it, we could also go receiver here because
yeah.
they
That's
could
all.
use another receiver, just another guy that could make some play in special teams or anything. Because currently,
Honestly, okay, if we're talking that, I would do Wetjen because he was like the best kick returner in all of college football
okay, yeah,
this
yeah.
past season. He hardly played any offense, but then he went to the Shrine Bowl and was productive on offense. And so, if you do enough research, and that's something that if the Texans are doing research on guys like that, that would then make the most sense because I mean, shit, they signed Braxton Berrios, who is always really just a punt returner.
Yep.
Like they've done stuff like that before. Wetjen as like a 7th receiver makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I mean, this is your mock. You get 8 picks. Uh, don't really give a shit about the PFF draft grade. I could care less. And I don't necessarily think the
Yeah.
Texans draft is going to be like the most popular draft ever. Like I don't think they're going to
No,
take.
it never will be.
And it never really, like you said, it never really is. It wasn't last year either. People didn't think a lot of the value was all that great. That you traded a good amount to go get Woody, this kind of stuff. But it works out,
Yeah.
right? You look at the 2024 draft with Kamari Lassiter, and that draft wasn't all that popular to a lot of people, right? And you look back now, that's pretty worked out pretty well. You got 2 Pro Bowl DBs out of it. Blake Fisher, you don't really know what he is yet. It's kind of tough. Who was their fourth round pick that year? I don't even remember, but they,
I don't
they
even know if they had one. They might have honestly
yeah,
went
here
to the
we can
fifth
we can
round.
even look. Let's see, 2024.
Yeah, I feel like that's honestly what happened.
But I don't necessarily think it's going to be the most popular draft. But with where their needs are, I mean, Kate Stover, who's brutal. So
Okay, yeah. Well,
they weren't necessarily wrong about that one. But I mean, Jamal Hill's been a really good special teamer. I still kind of like Solomon Byrd. I think there's potential for him to make the roster as an edge rusher, a depth guy. Um, Jawar Jordan had some good games last season. So, but
that's
obviously,
true. Yeah.
Kamari Lassiter is a Pro Bowl, All Pro level corner, and then Kalen Bullock made the Pro Bowl last year as well. So, the Texans have done a good job drafting. I trust them drafting. Um, I think at the end of the day that they're gonna be a good. I mean, really, they've been one of the best drafting teams, so why not trust them when it comes to drafting? Like I said, the value might not be like when Daniel Jeremiah's board. Okay, he might not. This guy might have been 120 on the board. A good example of Jalen Smith last year was a guy that was way lower on the boards when the Texans took him. But hey, you go look at how he played in camp and how he played when he actually got the snaps.
Yeah.
He looked really good. So the value maybe doesn't seem like the greatest, but once these guys play, I mean, they play well, and the Texans don't have that many needs. So if you're looking at a receiver in the second round and he's this projected guy, the Texans aren't taking him more than likely. So there's no point in looking at
Right.
that type of board. Just
Yeah.
get players that you
Yeah.
like, and I'm good with that. Get good players, and I think that's good.
Yeah. And what I'm thinking when you talk about that is like the Texans have never cared about value. And also teams will have second rounders that are graded out as seventh rounders on another person's
Yeah,
board. And so it's a cluster of everything and like they don't know what PFF has on this player. They don't care to do that. And I think this year is going to be a big example of there may be a lot of six rounders that are better than second rounders. And that's exciting because I do trust the Texans to at least find
absolutely.
someone that's going to be productive from the fifth to seventh round. I think this is the year where you see a late round pick really working out.
Yeah, I mean, you go look at the guys that we took, right? Like, I could see Jalen Husky be a really productive DB for them, right? And a guy like Anthony Lucas, right, could be a really productive edge rusher for them. Get that third edge rusher spot. So I'm probably gonna post this clip or post the mock draft. Guarantee you, people won't like it. I already know what's coming.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course.
but you know what? Like, again,
We don't know what else to do though at that. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like there's so many options that it's like, yeah, I understand that not everyone's gonna
Mhm.
love it, but they got what they needed and they're taking chances on talented players. That's all you
Absolutely.
can really ask
And I
for.
think once, we'll get some of these visits in, we'll get some draft rumors, and I'm sure we'll come back before the draft and kind of do maybe another mock draft, kind of talk about the draft a little bit more. And then hopefully we can get our draft stream in this year as well. That was fun last year. I think we should probably get
Yeah.
that going as well. Should be a fun year for that because I think a lot of random things are going to happen in the draft. You're going to see a lot of guys that maybe weren't projected this high go higher than you think and that kind of stuff. So should be a fun year. Obviously, fun free agency for the Texans so far. Fun offseason in general. Um, Definitely looking forward to the draft. Drew, you have anything else to add about free agency or draft or anything?
No, I think they frankly are done for the
Yeah, I
most
think so
part
too.
in free agency, and I think they're just looking forward to the draft and kind of looking forward to discussing amongst each other what me and you just talked about in terms of potential draft picks.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in. Obviously, lots of exciting talk for Texans, and I know we're gonna have more coming up soon with the draft and everything. Love draft season, obviously, probably the most fun season to cover the
Yeah.
cover the team and everything. So we appreciate all the support, and we will see y'all next time.